Hey everyone, in this video tutorial I am going to cover the basics of PySpark, which is an amazing tool for processing huge amounts of data. Okay, so for the purpose of this tutorial, I made this notebook on Google Colab, which includes all of the basics that you need. You can just open it. I will put the link to this notebook in the description, and you can just run the codes and see the results as I am doing the tutorial. If you don't have a Google account, you must create one in order to be able to use this notebook. So first you need to click here on connect or reconnect to have a Google Colab session. And here I put some explanation about PySpark. I explained that PySpark library works with Apache Spark, and it's a high performance distributed computing system. That's why we need to use this instead of pandas when we have a huge amount of data. Pandas is amazing, but it is good for small data sets. Okay, now we need to install PySpark using pip command, because by default, Google Colab doesn't have PySpark. Now, let me explain a little bit about the dataset that we're going to use in this tutorial. It's a free dataset about Titanic passengers, and it provides some information about their names, ages, genders, their ticket classes, and so on. You can download the dataset from this link. Okay, so here in this page, you can see the overview of this dataset. Well, this dataset is a classical one used for learning machine learning. So if you have some knowledge about regressions and so on, you should have seen this dataset. So we're going to use the trained dataset. Here you can see some information about the dataset, whether the passengers were survived or not, their ticket class, their gender, age, and so on. Okay, so you can download it from here. And once you have it downloaded, you can just upload the zip file by just dragging and dropping it here. And once it's uploaded, okay, pretty fast, you can unzip it, and as you can see, if you refresh here, you'll see the different CSV files that we have here, and we're going to use the train CSV. Now, in order to play a little bit with the dataset, you need to create a Spark session from the SQL module. So basically, by importing the Spark session, you are creating an entry point for using Spark, and you should define an app name for your Spark session, and that is for finding your app on a cluster, because on a Spark cluster you're going to have a lot of different apps, and for identifying them you need to provide a name for them, and you need to create a Spark session for each of them so you can distinguish them. Okay, now that we have our Spark session created, we can see some information about it here. As you can see, it shows the Spark version, and it shows the master URL. For our case, it's local because we're just doing it on this notebook, and the app name. The Spark UI doesn't work here, but if you install it locally, you can have some visual graphical information about your Spark cluster and Spark session, and you can have some sort of configurations, but I'm not going to talk about configurations here because this is just a beginner's tutorial. And here I also need to mention one point. I am using Spark session, not Spark context, because the Spark context is used for RDDs, resilient distributed data sets, which is like the old-fashioned way of processing data. But since we're going to use data frames, we are going to use a Spark session. So I'm going to move forward with a new way of doing things. But if you are working in an old project in which they use RDDs and they use Spark context, it's because of the type of data set that they have. Okay, now moving forward, let's read the CSV file. So we're going to create a data frame and then put that CSV file data inside that data frame. And when you print the schema, you can see some information about the data set. As you can see, because we had the infer schema as true, it could automatically detect the type of data, like the passenger ID is an integer, the name is a string, and so on. And header true means that the first line of the CSV is about the column names. df.describe shows some information about the data, but I think for this data set, it's not very useful. But it shows like the count of each column, the mean, the standard deviation, mean and max. For example, for age, this is useful. You can see like the eldest person on the ship was 80 years old, and the average, like the mean of the ages were like 29. You can have like an overall information about the data set using describe. And when you run something like df show, you can see the data set. You can see like the first 20 rows. But if you put something like 50 here, then you can see the 50 first passengers. And if you set it like to truncate false, I think that's, yeah, you can see like the full name. So it doesn't show like 3 dots. But when you have it true, which is the default value, you'll see that you cannot see the full information in each column. What else? Let's say we want to have a data set which only includes the age column. So if you define age underline df and then select the age, you can then later on see that data frame. So now we have a data frame only including the age. And as you can see, some of the values are null values because we don't have the information for the age of those passengers. And let's say we only want to select the age and name and then show it. And you can see it this way. Or let's say we want to have a new column in our data set, in our data frame, and we are going to call it new age, and we're going to include age. So it's like a copy of one column. These are some of the basics that can be very useful in many cases. As you can see, like the new age and age are the same. We can also multiply it by 2 and then create a new column. In this case, it's like double age. As you can see, it doubled the age by just multiplying to 2. There are also some commands used for removing the null values. As you could see up there, there are some null values in the age. So if we drop those values, okay, let's say here we're first going to write, and then we're going to show df.show. As you can see, there are no more null values in the age column. Okay, moreover, you can filter the data that you have. For example, you only want to see the male passengers. So you can use the filter, and then you can only see the males, masters, or the masters. Or let's say select age and sex columns for male passengers. You can only see the male passengers and their age. Or what else? Filter male passengers who are older than 50. That's how you can see. Okay, just play around with it and try different things. You can also perform SQL functions using PySpark, things like group by and aggregating data. For example, you can use a group by and show some information about the passengers and aggregate them and count them. There were like 360 male passengers who didn't survive, they just died, and there were like 197 female passengers who survived. And you can see some useful information using group by. It works just like in SQL. So if you know SQL, then it's going to be easy for you. What else? Filtering male passengers and select survived column, then count the number of rows. So as you can see here, first it filters the male in the data frame and also the ones who survived, and then it shows the count of them, like how many people who were male survived. 93. You can also see it up here. So there are different ways of getting the same information, as you can see. Or you want to see the average age of different passengers according to their passenger class and sex. As you can see here, the passenger class was for upper, middle, and lower. So here, as you can see, older people had a higher class. So for example, the average age of male passengers who had the first class, they were like 41. And for female, it was like 34. This is actually interesting. And the lower class were mainly for younger people. They were like 26. And for the case of female, it was 21. Group by P class, and this is actually age. And find the maximum age. So the maximum age of each class. So the first class, the passenger who was the eldest was like 80 years old, and so on. What else? You can do some group by according to passenger class and sex, and see the mean age or max age. And this is the mean age. They're like less than 1 year old. And you can also count distinct. So it shows the distinct values of each column. So as you can see, the port of as you can see, the port of embarkation were like 3 different types: C, Q, and S, which was these ports like the Queenstown, Southampton, and Cherbourg. So it shows that there are like 3 different distinct ports of embarkation. Or for instance, you can use alias. So when you use alias, basically it creates a column with the specified name that you want, and then it shows the average age in it. This is also very useful when you're processing data and you want to use them later in your code. There is also a very interesting concept in PySpark called user-defined functions, or the UDFs, which is a custom function that you can create and use in Spark, and it allows you to perform some transformation or computation on the data that is not available in the built-in functions of PySpark. So when you want to do something like average, or you want to do something like count, mean, max, these are included in PySpark. But what if you want to do something more complicated? For example, this is an interesting one. Let me run it and then show you the results. What if you want to find the title of each passenger according to their names? So this is something that PySpark doesn't give you by default. So you have to define a UDF. As you can see, here we have the names. Let me actually truncate this so you can see it better. Truncate false. Okay, so here you can see the full name, and let's say we want to know their title, whether it's a master, Mrs., Miss, master, or what. So as you can see, this function, it gets the titles. Here you need a decorator that shows you're defining a UDF and what's the return type. And here what we do is that we split the name when we reach a comma. So let's say it divides this name into Brand and Mr. Owen Harris. So this is the 0 and this is the 1. So we get the Mr. Owen Harris. And then later on we get the 0 part of that second part, which is the master. And then we use a strip to just get rid of the spaces. So then we get the master out of it. And then we can apply this get title function on a whole column. So that way we can see the titles of each passengers. So these are some of the basics. I'm sure if you play around and try this yourself, you can do more stuff. I just try to cover the most important things that you need for starting off with PySpark. And in the future tutorials, I will cover more stuff like the Python machine learning library, which is a very important and great tool for doing machine learning operations on your data. Hope you have enjoyed this tutorial. And if you liked it, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you in the next one.